The order is already moving when the day begins. It exists as a sequence of words arranged according to regulation, copied cleanly, transmitted without emphasis. It does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself. It passes from one desk to another, from one hand to the next, unchanged. Each transfer confirms its legitimacy. Each repetition strengthens its weight. No one asks where it originated. That question is not part of the process. What matters is that the order conforms. Its language matches approved structure. Its timing aligns with established schedules. Its instructions are clear enough to be followed without interpretation. It is read once, then again, not for meaning, but for accuracy. The paper bears the correct marking. The message arrives through the correct channels. It is logged, acknowledged, and relayed onward. Each step is documented. Each response is predictable. Compliance is not discussed. It is assumed. The system was built for this exact motion. The order moves downward at a steady pace, neither rushed nor delayed. There is no urgency attached to it, only certainty. It does not require persuasion. It does not anticipate resistance. It was not written to be debated, only enacted. Those who receive it recognize the format immediately. They have seen this structure before. The phrasing signals authority without explanation. The sequence of instructions leaves no room for adjustment. It is complete as written. There is no room for context. Context is unnecessary when procedure is sufficient. The order does not describe consequences. It does not need to. Outcomes are not its concern. Its purpose ends at execution. Anything beyond that belongs to another document, another time. As it continues to move, small actions begin to align around it. Schedules adjust without comment. Resources are redirected as a matter of routine. Communications synchronize. Each response fits into a larger pattern that no single individual fully observes. No objections are recorded. There is no margin provided for doubt. The order does not demand belief, only obedience. It does not rely on trust, only structure. It advances because the system is designed to carry it forward, uninterrupted, until completion. By the time the final acknowledgement is issued, the process is no longer reversible. The order has passed too many hands, triggered too many mechanisms. Its execution has already begun. Even if the result has not yet appeared, the words remain intact. The procedure remains flawless, and the outcome, though still unseen, has already been decided. The order does not change when it enters the building. Inside, everything is arranged to receive it. Rooms divided by function, tables cleared to a standard, clocks synchronized, a narrow flow of information moving through narrow openings controlled by routine. Voices kept low, not out of fear, but out of habit. The atmosphere is not tense. It is regulated. The first person to handle it does not interpret it. Interpretation is not a task assigned at that level. The task is confirmation, that it is real, that it is current, that it belongs. A stamp, a notation, a time recorded down to the order becomes a line in a ledger, and that line becomes proof that it is now part of the day's machinery. A copy is made, then another. The words are reproduced with the same spacing, the same structure, the same careful avoidance of extra meaning. Errors are corrected without remark. A smudge is replaced. A crease is flattened. The content is treated like a component, not like a message. It moves to a second point of handling where the environment is slightly louder, slightly faster. Here, the order is not simply received. It is translated into movement. Lists are adjusted. Vehicles are assigned. Supplies are counted. Communication windows are marked. There is no argument because there is no forum for argument. Everything has a designated path. Questions, when they exist, are shaped to fit the system. Not why, but which route, which time, which quantity, which unit. The system accepts these questions because they do not threaten they serve it. They keep it clean. They keep it moving. Farther down, the order becomes less like paper and more like a schedule. It becomes a set of times that must be met, a sequence that must be completed in the correct order. Certain preparations begin because they always begin when that kind of instruction arrives. Equipment is inspected because equipment is always inspected. Lines are formed because lines are always formed. The order does not need to describe these details. The institution already knows what it requires. The chain that carries it is not personal. It is structural. Each stage has a defined responsibility and a defined limit. One segment of the chain is authorized to pass it forward, not to question it. Another is authorized to allocate resources, not to alter intent. Another is authorized to coordinate timing, not to reconsider feasibility. No individual holds the full shape of the decision. No individual is required to. The system runs on partial vision. People see their portion and trust that someone else sees them. That trust is not emotional. It is operational. It is trained. It is reinforced by repetition. It keeps the institution efficient. It keeps it fast. It prevents collapse caused by hesitation. It also prevents correction. A third point of handling receives the order and begins to break it down into smaller directives. The original language remains intact, but now it is surrounded by supplemental instructions: how to stage supplies, how to report progress, how to confirm completion. These additions do not compete with the order. They orbit it. They make it executable at scale. Nothing in these steps is improvised. Improvisation is for emergencies, and emergencies are formally declared. Until that declaration exists, there is only routine. The order generates signals: a messenger dispatched, a phone line opened, a radio frequency reserved, a meeting convened for exactly as long as regulation permits. The meeting is not for debate, it is for distribution. People listen, repeat, acknowledge. Words are repeated back in the same phrasing to confirm that they were heard correctly. Precision is valued more than understanding. Somewhere in the sequence, the order is read aloud in a room where maps hang on walls and tables hold neatly aligned tools. Fingers trace lines, not as a gesture of curiosity, but as an administrative necessity. Routes are measured, times are mapped, positions are assigned. No one says the word risk. Risk is already assumed, and therefore does not require mention. The institution does not treat danger as a reason to stop. It treats danger as an environment in which the schedule must still be met. The chain continues outward. In places where the air is colder and the walls are thinner, copies of the order arrive with a slight delay, but the same authority. The delay is accounted for. Delays are normal. The system measures them and continues. If a delay grows too large, it triggers a correction in timing, not in intent. The order is still the order. At the lowest levels of distribution, the order becomes a set of simple instructions with a narrow focus. Be at a certain place at a certain time. Carry a certain amount. Move when told. Wait when told. Report when required. The complexity that might have revealed a flaw has already been absorbed higher up, compressed into a clean sequence of command. The system does not allow doubt to travel as easily as orders do. Doubt has no standardized form. There is no box for it in the ledger, no line for it in the report. If it appears as delay, as confusion, as repeated requests for clarification. The institution recognizes these as problems, but not as warnings. It addresses them with more instruction, more repetition, more enforcement of procedure. Efficiency corrects human uncertainty, the way pressure corrects a misaligned component. It forces it into place. Around the order, the environment remains calm. The calm is institutional, not personal. It is produced by training and expectation. People do not move with panic, because panic would slow the process. They move with familiarity, because familiarity is faster. There are small moments where the chain's rigidity becomes visible. A minor shortage discovered and compensated for by reallocating from another area, because the order must be met. A route questioned not because it seems dangerous, but because it conflicts with a standing protocol, and protocols must be reconciled, so the chain remains unbroken. A timing window tightened not because it feels impossible, but because the schedule demands coordination with another schedule, and the system prizes coordination. The order is treated as immovable, and so the environment bends instead. As the instruction reaches its final recipients, it arrives stripped of origin and stripped of explanation. It carries only the force of the institution behind it. That force is enough. It always has been. No one needs to be convinced that the order is real. Realness is confirmed by the channel it traveled through. The path is the proof. The chain itself becomes a guarantee of correctness. And because the chain is unchallenged, the order gains a kind of inevitability that has nothing to do with whether it is wise. It is now embedded in schedule, in resource movement, in aligned clocks, in prepared equipment, in rehearsed signal. It has already created a shape in the day that cannot be undone without disrupting everything around it. By the time the last acknowledgement is sent upward, the order is no longer a message. It is a structure. And once a structure exists, everyone inside it has already been placed. The order does not announce the moment execution begins. There is no clear boundary between preparation and action. One flows into the other without pause, because the system was designed that way. By the time movement becomes visible, the sequence has already started. At a precise minute, signals are released. They are short, standardized, unmistakable. Each signal reaches exactly who it is meant to reach, and no one else. Responses follow immediately, not because of urgency, but because timing is synchronized. Watches have been checked. Clocks were aligned earlier. The system expects movement now. Units begin to reposition according to pre-assigned paths. Not because those paths are optimal, but because they were specified. There is no deviation. Deviation would require authorization, and authorization would require a pause. There is no provision for pause. Vehicles start when scheduled. Doors open and close in sequence. Equipment is lifted, loaded, secured, exactly as rehearsed. Each motion has been practiced before in other contexts, under other orders. Muscle memory replaces reflection. Hands move before thought can interfere. Communication flows continuously, but narrowly. Reports confirm location, timing, readiness. No one reports concern. Concern is not a reportable condition. What matters is whether instructions have been followed. Responses are brief and uniform. Acknowledged. In position. Proceeding. The order does not ask for interpretation, so none is offered. When minor inconsistencies appear, they are resolved locally, quietly, in ways that preserve the original instruction. A delay is absorbed by compressing later steps. A shortage is corrected by borrowing from a nearby allocation. The objective remains untouched. Movement accelerates, not emotionally, but mechanically. One completed step triggers the next. The chain reacts to itself. The system advances because it was built to advance once set in motion. At certain points, personnel pause exactly as instructed. Waiting is part of execution. Waiting is not hesitation. It is controlled stillness, timed to fit the larger sequence. During these pauses, there is no discussion. Silence is not imposed. It is assumed. The absence of speech keeps the order intact. Maps are consulted, but only to confirm alignment with the plan. They are not tools for reconsideration. Lines traced earlier are followed now without adjustment. Terrain, conditions, unforeseen variables are noted only insofar as they must be reported. They do not alter movement. The system rewards compliance with clarity. Those who follow precisely know what to do next. Those who hesitate create uncertainty, and uncertainty is corrected quickly. A reminder of timing, a repetition of instruction, a reaffirmation of sequence. The order is restated, not revised. As execution continues, the chain lengthens. More elements become involved, each receiving only what they need to know. The broader picture remains fragmented by design. Fragmentation prevents delay. It also prevents understanding from accumulating in one place. No one sees enough to stop it. The order moves through bodies and machines with equal indifference. Human effort is treated as a resource to be positioned and expended. When fatigue appears, it is managed by rotation, not reconsideration. The schedule accounts for exhaustion the same way it accounts for distance. Reports continue to move upward, confirming compliance. Downward, reminders of timing and alignment continue to flow. The communication loop remains clean. Nothing in it suggests that anything is wrong. The system reads this as success. Execution reaches points where reversal would now require formal cancellation. No such cancellation exists. The absence of cancellation is interpreted as confirmation. Silence from above is not uncertainty, it is approval by default. At each junction where choice could exist, procedure fills the space. The order does not need to forbid questioning. The structure makes questioning irrelevant. There is no mechanism to convert doubt into action. The process continues, steady and coordinated. Movements intersect exactly where planned. Signals align. Transfers occur on time. From within the system, the operation appears controlled, even elegant. Efficiency gives the illusion of correctness. What matters is not whether the order fits reality, but whether reality can be forced to fit. And as execution advances, the system commits more of itself to the path already chosen. Resources are now too widely deployed. Timelines too tightly linked. Any change would ripple outward, disrupting more than it would save. The order, followed exactly as written, becomes irreversible not through intent, but through accumulation. By the time the final phase of execution begins, obedience has replaced judgment completely. The system is no longer carrying out a command, it is completing it. The first indications do not arrive as alarms. They appear as minor irregularities, registered quietly in routine reports. A timing confirmation arrives later than expected, but still within tolerance. A position is reported as held, though the phrasing lacks its usual precision. A signal repeats itself once, then again, not because it was misunderstood, but because acknowledgement took longer to return. The system absorbs these details without pause. Delays are measured, categorized, and folded back into the schedule. The order does not contain instructions for reevaluation, only for continuation. Since continuation remains possible, it is chosen automatically. As movement progresses, the environment begins to resist alignment. Conditions differ slightly from what the order assumed, not enough to halt execution, but enough to require constant adjustment at the margins. These adjustments remain local. They do not rise upward as warnings. They are treated as normal friction. Reports continue to move through the chain, but their tone changes subtly. Language becomes more careful, more procedural. Words are selected to confirm compliance, rather than describe difficulty. The structure rewards those who maintain clarity, not those who introduce complexity. Some elements reach positions later than planned. Others arrive exactly on time, but find the surrounding conditions altered. The order does not account for this discrepancy, and so the system resolves it by forcing synchronization anyway. Waiting periods are shortened. Movements are compressed. timing windows narrow. The order remains unchanged. At certain points, communication gaps appear. They are brief, but noticeable. A report is delayed. A response is missing. Protocol addresses this by repeating the request, not by questioning the cause. Repetition restores contact. The chain remains intact. No single message carries enough weight to trigger intervention. As the operation continues, signs of strain multiply. Equipment reports shift from confirmation to qualification. Not broken, but stressed. Not lost, but delayed. Not failed, but compromised. Each qualifier is accepted because none of them directly contradict the order. The system is built to tolerate imperfection as long as motion continues. In some areas, coordination falters. Elements that were meant to align arrive out of sequence. The solution is not to stop, but to force alignment through acceleration. Faster movement compensates for misalignment. Speed replaces caution. The order does not recognize the concept of compounding error. Higher levels of the structure receive summaries, not details. The summaries confirm progress. They show compliance percentages, timelines still within acceptable ranges, objectives not yet missed. From above, the operation appears strained but intact. From within, the pressure is constant. There are moments when individuals recognize that conditions no longer match assumptions. These moments remain isolated. They cannot be converted into action because the chain does not permit lateral correction. Only upward escalation is allowed, and escalation requires proof of failure, not anticipation of it. The order continues to be cited as justification. When discrepancies arise, the response is to restate the instruction, not reinterpret it. Authority flows downward. Reality is expected to adjust. As more resources are committed, flexibility decreases. Backup plans exist only for interruptions explicitly listed in regulation. What is occurring now does not fit those categories. Therefore, no alternative path is authorized. The system moves forward because stopping would require a reason stronger than deviation. Warnings do not arrive as warnings. They arrive as noise, small deviations, incomplete reports, delayed confirmations. Each one is manageable. Together, they form a pattern that no single position in the chain is structured to recognize. By the time outcomes begin to diverge visibly from intent, the order has already been fulfilled in every procedural sense. All required actions have been taken. All instructions have been followed. The failure does not come from disobedience or chaos. It comes from precision applied to a flawed directive. And as the gap between instruction and reality widens, the system responds in the only way it knows how. It continues. The breakdown does not arrive all at once. It spreads unevenly, moving through the structure in fragments. A segment of the operation ceases to report. Another reports completion, but without the confirmation signals that usually follow. Elsewhere, movement continues according to schedule, unaware that the framework it depends on has already begun to give way. The order is still in effect. At points where coordination is required, alignment fails. Timelines intersect without synchronization. Elements arrive to find nothing where something was expected, or something where absence had been assumed. The system treats these moments as anomalies, not as indicators. Procedures exist for anomalies. They do not include reversal. Attempts to restore order focus on enforcing compliance more strictly. Messages become shorter. Language hardens. Instructions are repeated with greater emphasis on timing and sequence. Authority tightens as control weakens. Resources are committed faster than planned, not because they will solve the problem, but because they are available and unassigned resources represent inefficiency. The institution prefers expenditure to hesitation. The order justifies further commitment simply by still existing. Communication degrades, not into silence, but into distortion. Reports arrive incomplete. Confirmations reference positions that no longer correspond to reality. The chain continues to process these inputs as if they are reliable, because there is no alternative framework prepared to replace them. In some areas, execution completes exactly as instructed and produces no effect. In others, execution cannot complete because prerequisite conditions no longer exist. The order does not recognize this distinction. Completion is measured by action taken, not by outcome achieved. As failures accumulate, the system loses its ability to localize them. What began as contained discrepancies now overlap. One delay causes another. One missing element forces compensation elsewhere. Adjustments made to preserve the schedule undermine stability in adjacent areas. The structure bends, then fractures. There is no singular moment of realization, no announcement of collapse, only a growing inability to reconcile reports with reality. The system responds by narrowing acceptable responses even further. Variance is treated as error. Error is treated as discipline failure. Discipline is enforced through repetition, not reevaluation. Movement continues in some areas long after purpose has dissolved. Actions are carried out because they were ordered, not because they still connect to an objective. The order has outlived its relevance, but not its authority. Loss occurs, but it is not described as such. It appears as absence. Units that no longer respond, assets that are no longer tracked, time windows that close without confirmation. The system records these as unresolved items, pending clarification. Clarification never arrives. At higher levels, summaries begin to conflict. Progress reports contradict each other without explanation. The institution responds by prioritizing the most orderly version of events. Clean data replaces accurate data. What cannot be reconciled is set aside. The collapse becomes undeniable only when execution can no longer continue, not because the order is rescinded, but because there is nothing left that can act on it. The chain has extended beyond its capacity to sustain itself. Even then, the language remains procedural. Operations are marked incomplete. Objectives are listed as unmet. Causes are not specified. The order is not named as flawed. It is simply recorded as concluded. The system does not stop to acknowledge what has occurred. It transitions. By the time silence replaces motion, the failure has already been absorbed into reports, logs, and classifications. The disorder is reorganized into structure. The consequences are measured, but not interpreted. What remains is not shock or grief or anger. What remains is the record of a command followed perfectly, and the damage that followed it just as precisely. After the movement ends, the system does not pause. There is no formal moment set aside to mark what has happened. Activity continues elsewhere, following other instructions, guided by other schedule. The absence left behind by the failed operation is treated as a completed segment of the past, not as a subject for examination. Paper replaces motion. Reports are assembled from what remains. They are organized carefully, following established templates. Dates are aligned. Timelines are reconstructed from partial data. Gaps are noted without emphasis. Where information is missing, neutral language is used. Unavailable, unconfirmed, unable to verify. The order itself appears in these documents only as a reference point. It is cited for sequence, not for judgment. Its wording is preserved exactly, as if accuracy alone might explain everything that followed. There are no meetings dedicated to blame. There are only reviews, and the reviews focus on procedure. Whether steps were followed, whether reporting intervals were maintained, whether protocols were observed. The answers to these questions are largely affirmative. The system finds reassurance in that. Responsibility diffuses naturally through the structure. Each level confirms that it acted within its authority. Each section demonstrates compliance with expectations. No single position is required to account for the whole, because the whole does not belong to any one position. The order has already been archived by the time its consequences are fully counted. In training materials, the event appears briefly, stripped of detail. It is referenced as an example of operational complexity, of environmental unpredictability, of the difficulty inherent in coordination at scale. The language is careful. It avoids implication. It avoids specificity. What cannot be categorized is omitted. Those who were closest to the execution return to routine. New schedules replace old ones. Equipment is reassigned. Rosters are updated. Absences are filled by process, not by discussion. The structure closes around the gap and continues forward. No revision to the command system is announced. None is required. The failure is treated as an exception, not as a product of design. The institution protects itself by framing the event as contained, isolated, concluded. Silence follows, but not the kind that suggests reflection. It is the silence of normalization. The order is no longer mentioned. Its title does not circulate. Its phrasing is not repeated. There is no prohibition against discussion. Discussion simply has nowhere to go. Without a designated channel, it dissipates. Elsewhere, new orders are already moving through the same pathway. They follow the same structure, the same formal language, the same sequence of confirmation and distribution. The chain remains intact because it was never considered broken. The system has absorbed the failure the way it absorbs everything else, by reducing it to manageable components and filing them away. What remains is not a lesson, but a pattern. Authority continues to flow downward. Compliance continues to move upward. The distance between decision and consequence remains unchanged. And somewhere within that distance, another command is already in transit, perfectly formatted, procedurally sound, and moving forward without resistance. The system waits for nothing. It never has.